My name's Marcus Ellis. I'm 24, and up until 9 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. If you'd told me back then that I'd lose my degree, my job, my reputation, my future, because of a lie, I would have laughed. I was the guy who played it safe. The one parents trusted. The one who stayed late to help clean up. Who got called dependable in recommendation letters. I worked hard. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I had a 5-year plan, a girlfriend I loved since high school, a savings account for a ring she didn't even know about. I was building a life. Until one Friday night, everything I had collapsed in 11 seconds. Let me rewind. Cassie and I met sophomore year of high school. Chemistry lab. Literally. She was better at balancing equations. I was better with circuits, so we made a good team. 3 months later, we were dating. 5 years later, our families were celebrating holidays together. Her dad, Steve, taught me more about engines than my own father ever had. Her mom, Diane, called me her bonus son. My parents loved Cassie like she was blood. We were the couple people pointed at and said, they're gonna make it. We didn't plan to go to the same university, but we both ended up at Indiana State Her for early childhood education. Me for computer science. We didn't live together, but we saw each other daily. Had joint friend groups, inside jokes, summer cabins at Lake Monroe with both our families. Everything felt solid, until her little sister started showing up more and more. Amy, 3 years younger. Always the curious kid tagging along, asking a million questions. At first, it was harmless, just the annoying little sister stuff. But somewhere around her 16th birthday, the vibe shifted. At barbecues, she'd lean into me too long when she hugged. Wear shorts that weren't there the summer before. Ask me for help with the dumbest things just to be close. I shrugged it off. Teenagers are weird. But then came the texts. At first, about Cassie. What should I get her for her birthday? That kind of thing. Then more personal. How she didn't feel understood by guys her age. How I seemed different. How lucky Cassie was to have me. I showed some of them to Cassie once. She laughed it off. She's always had a little crush on you. It's harmless. It didn't feel harmless, so I started setting boundaries. No more being alone with Amy. No more dropping by if she was home. Cassie didn't get it. We fought about it. She said I was acting weird around her family. But then came that night. Cassie was out of town at a teaching conference in Chicago and one of 5 students selected from our entire department. She'd worked her ass off to prepare. I was proud of her. Her dad, Steve, called that Friday afternoon asking if I could help him install new shelves in his garage. Said his back was acting up. Honestly, I was happy to help. The guy had taught me to rebuild a carburetor on a '67 Camaro. I owed him. So I drove over around 6 p.m. We spent 3 hours drilling, lifting, measuring, sweating. Around 9:30 we were done. Steve offered me a sandwich and soda, and I was just about to leave when Amy appeared at the front door. Wait, my laptop's acting weird and I have a paper due Monday. Can you look at it? Steve chimed in before I could answer. Yeah, help her out. Marcus, you're good with that tech stuff. So I followed her into the kitchen. The issue was simple, just a cache, clear and restart. Took me 10 minutes, tops. But as I was packing up, Amy stepped between me and the door. She was close. Too close. Thanks so much, she said, eyes wide, voice syrupy. You're always so helpful. I stepped back. No problem. Tell your dad I said good night. She stepped forward. He's in the shower. We're alone now. She placed her hand on my chest. I froze. Amy, I said firmly, removing her hand. This isn't appropriate. She didn't flinch. Why not? I'm 18 now. It's not illegal. I took another step back. Because I'm with your sister. I love your sister. She closed the space again, eyes locked on mine. She doesn't have to know. I've seen how you look at me. I looked away. I don't look at you. This has to stop. Then she tried to kiss me. I turned my head and gently pushed her shoulders back, creating distance. Back off. This is never going to happen. That's when everything changed. The sweet, seductive act vanished. Her face hardened. You think you're too good for me, that I'm some stupid little girl. This isn't about you, I said, grabbing my keys. It's about Cassie. Don't ever bring this up again. I was halfway out the door when I heard her yell after me. You're such a jerk. You'll regret this. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I lost everything. The next morning, my roommate Tyler woke me up, holding my phone. Dude, you've got like 17 missed calls. Something's up. I blinked at the screen. Missed calls from Cassie, my parents, her parents, even friends I hadn't spoken to in months. I called Cassie first. She picked up on the first ring, crying. How could you, Marcus, she whispered. Cassie, what's going on? With my sister in my parents' house. My stomach dropped. Cassie, whatever Amy told you, it's not true. She came on to me. I turned her down. She showed us everything. The texts. The bruises on her wrists. What? She told us how you've been grooming her for months. How you forced yourself on her last night. No, that's insane. I fixed her laptop and left. She tried to kiss me and I said no. That's it. Stop lying. She has proof. She must have faked those messages. And the bruises she snapped. Finger-shaped bruises on her wrists, a mark on her back where you shoved her. My mouth went dry. I didn't touch her. Cassie, please. I don't ever want to hear your voice again, she said, voice cold and flat. My dad's filing a police report. Then the line went dead. I stood there, barefoot in my kitchen, phone still buzzing in my hand. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a setup. I wish I could tell you that was the worst part. It wasn't. That came later when I lost my scholarship, my job, my freedom. But I'll tell you all that in the next part, once I explain how one lie tore apart everything I'd built since I was 16. Because the truth wasn't enough to save me. I didn't even have time to put on socks. Still barefoot, I grabbed my hoodie, keys, phone, and drove straight to Cassie's house. I wasn't thinking straight. I just knew I had to explain. Face to face, she had to see me, hear the truth. There was no way she'd believe her sister over me. Not after 5 years. But when I pulled up to the house, Steve was standing in the driveway, like a bouncer at a club I no longer belonged to. Arms folded, face blank, no warmth. Go home, Marcus. Please, I just need 2 minutes with Cassie. She doesn't want to see you. And neither do I. My throat tightened. You know I wouldn't hurt Amy? You know me. He stepped forward, voice low and sharp. You need to leave. Before I call the cops myself, that's when it hit me. I wasn't the son-in-law they loved anymore. I was the monster in their kitchen. I drove home in silence, hands shaking so badly I missed 2 turns. When I got to my parents' house, both of them were already waiting at the kitchen table, faces pale, eyes tired. My mom clutched a tissue in one hand. My dad held his phone, still glowing with a message he hadn't finished reading. "What happened?" he asked, skipping hello entirely. So I told them. The shelves, the laptop, Amy's advances, how I said no, how I left. Word for word. They sat there quietly for a while. Then my dad sighed, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of belief and doubt wrestling in the same breath. "Steve showed me the texts," he said finally. "They go back months. They're graphic. They're fake," I snapped. "She must have used some app to spoof them. I never sent her anything." And the bruises, Mom's voice trembled. Did you touch her at all?" "I never laid a hand on her," I said, locking eyes with them. "She did this. She's lying." They didn't say anything, but the silence told me everything. That night, the police came. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. They were polite, professional, cold. They let me ride with them voluntarily to the station. Said it was better this way, as if dragging me out in cuffs would have been too dramatic. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. Detective Reynolds, salt and pepper hair, eyes that didn't blink enough, sat across from me with a thick folder full of printouts. Next to him, a young female officer scribbled notes while barely looking up. He showed me screenshots, texts that looked like they came from me, phrases I'd never say. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You looked so hot in those shorts. Keep it our little secret." The timestamps went back 5 months. Then came the pictures. Blurry, dark, but manipulated to look like I was standing too close to Amy in the garage. A shadow behind her. A silhouette. "She edited these," I said, "or faked the number." Reynolds didn't flinch. "Why would she do that?" I hesitated. "Because I rejected her." He raised an eyebrow. "You expect a jury to believe that an 18-year-old girl orchestrated this entire thing because of a crush?" I stared at him. "Yes, because that's exactly what happened." They charged me that night. Sexual assault of a minor, electronic solicitation, sexual harassment. Even though she had just turned 18, some of the texts were dated from before. My parents posted the $50,000 bail. But everything changed the moment I walked out of that station. University suspended pending investigation. Scholarship revoked. Job at the tech startup gone terminated by HR via email. Friends vanished. The moment the story hit campus Reddit, I became a walking cautionary tale. Predator in tech housing. Fake feminist, real creep. My photos were scrubbed from every group feed. People I'd studied with, laughed with, pulled all-nighters with, gone. Just like that. Even the $4,800 I'd saved for Cassie's ring locked. My bank froze my accounts pending investigation. And Cassie? She blocked my number, my socials, even Venmo. Her best friend posted a long rant on Instagram about believing survivors. Ending with Cassie was brave enough to walk away. We support her. We protect her. I wasn't just accused. I was erased. I tried to hold it together. I really did. But there's only so many doors you can knock on before the looks change, before the whispers follow you into coffee shops and gas stations. That's the guy who, my own mom cried behind closed doors. My dad started every morning with, "Is there anything else you haven't told us?" I moved back into my childhood bedroom. The posters were gone, replaced with silence. Every night. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many years of my life were about to be stolen. Tyler, my old roommate, called every day. He offered to come back, but I told him no. I wasn't ready to let anyone see how low I'd fallen. My little sister Grace was the only one who never doubted me. "She's always been weird around you," she said once, arms crossed. "Amy asked me to show her your old yearbook photo like 5 times. Even I thought it was creepy." Her words helped, but not enough. Nothing helped enough. By month 2, the lawyer bills had eaten every dollar I ever saved. My parents took out a second mortgage. They didn't say it out loud, but I heard them whispering about Grace's college fund, about retirement. I became a ghost. No job, no school, no identity except the one Amy had scripted for me. A sick, twisted story where I was the villain and she was the wide-eyed victim. I started writing in a notebook, not because I thought it would save me, but because I had to remember my version of the truth. Every date, every conversation, every emotion. It became my ritual. The notebook became my anchor. It sat beside my bed, dog-eared and stained with coffee. Whenever I felt like I was disappearing, like maybe they were right, I opened it, reread, remembered. That notebook saved my mind when nothing else could. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the plea offer came. 3 years, minimum security facility. Possibility of parole after 18 months. My lawyer, Dave, looked me in the eye and said, "You should think about it. If we lose trial, you're looking at 5 to 10. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do," I said. But even as I said it, part of me wondered, what if no one ever believes me? And that's when Tyler showed up at my front door with a duffel bag and a 6-pack. "I'm not letting you go through this alone," he said. "Also, your beard looks like roadkill. You need a shower." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. That night, we stayed up till 2 a.m. rereading the case files. Because if I was going down, I was going down fighting. But what we found buried in those files, that changed everything. The first real crack didn't come from the police or from the court. It came from an old friend of Cassie's cousin. Her name was Megan. Megan and I were never close. She was the artsy, quiet type, always had a sketchbook in hand at family barbecues. We'd exchanged maybe a dozen words over the years. But out of nowhere, 2 weeks after the plea deal was offered, I got a message through Tyler. "Tell Marcus I don't believe what Amy's saying. I think I can help." When we met at a small diner halfway between our towns, she didn't waste time. "Amy's been jealous of Cassie for as long as I can remember," Megan said, stirring her iced tea but not drinking it. "And she's always had a thing for you. Even when you two weren't around, she'd bring you up, like, obsessively." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "She told our friends once that you texted her late at night. Flirty stuff. But she never showed proof. Everyone just thought it was attention-seeking. She leaned in. She lies. A lot. She lied about dating a college guy when she was 15. Faked texts. Claimed a teacher was into her, once almost got him fired. Turned out she just didn't like her grade. I sat there, heart pounding. It wasn't solid proof, but it was a pattern. A pattern I could work with. That night, I wrote it all down in the notebook. The symbol I clung to every day, the battered, spiral-bound lifeline that reminded me I still had a voice, even if no one else could hear it. The next morning, Dave, my lawyer, called to meet. "Don't get your hopes up," he said, sipping from a thermos that smelled like burnt coffee and frustration. "We still need hard evidence, but it's something. And we're running out of time." Trial was less than 3 months away, and Amy's story was airtight on the surface. But Dave had brought in a new guy, a digital forensic analyst named Kevin. 40-ish. Glasses constantly sliding down his nose, hands stained with printer ink. The kind of guy who would rather talk to metadata than people. Kevin took one look at the supposed messages between me and Amy and said, "These are off." He couldn't prove they were faked, not yet. But he noticed inconsistencies. Timestamps that didn't align. Formatting that didn't match my usual texting style. Different spacing. Tiny discrepancies that the human eye misses, but code remembers. "It's not a smoking gun," Kevin warned, "but it raises doubt, and doubt is what we need." Meanwhile, I was unraveling. I'd lost weight. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours straight. I'd wake up in cold sweats, heart pounding like I'd been chased through my dreams. My notebook was filled with scribbles now, half memories, half panic. Some days, I wrote down the same sentence over and over. "I didn't do this." Then, out of nowhere, another message came. This time from a girl named Olivia. I knew Amy in high school. She wrote, "She did something similar to my brother. We met the next day in a quiet coffee shop just off campus." She looked nervous, like she might back out. But once she sat down, the story spilled out in a whisper. They worked together at a grocery store. She had a crush on him. He didn't feel the same. One day she told everyone he touched her in the break room. He got fired. Did she press charges? No. But the rumor stuck. It nearly ruined his scholarship. Only reason he didn't get arrested was because there were cameras. Another lie, another pattern. Olivia agreed to testify. It wasn't much, but it was something. In May, Megan reached out again. I overheard Amy talking to my aunt. She said, she's changing parts of her story, stuff about the timeline, where it happened. This was big. Inconsistencies kill credibility. Dave filed a discovery motion to access any revised statements from the prosecution. The judge granted it. And sure enough, Amy's story had changed. Suddenly. She claimed the alleged assault didn't just happen in the kitchen, but continued into the living room. She also added that I'd threatened her afterward, which is why she didn't tell anyone right away. Dave nearly jumped from his seat. "This is good," he said. "Really good. Judges hate changing testimonies, makes juries nervous. But we still need more." I asked him the one question I'd been afraid to ask for months. "Do you think we can win?" He paused, looked at me for a long time. "I think we finally have a shot, but it'll take everything you've got." Meanwhile, my parents were falling apart. The strain was everywhere: money, trust, silence. They'd spent their retirement fund on legal fees. My mom cried herself to sleep more than once. My dad kept asking if I wanted to just take the deal and move on. They didn't say they doubted me, but I could feel it in their eyes, that flicker of fear, and it killed me. Because the truth is, the worst part of being falsely accused isn't losing your job, or your degree, or your future. It's losing the people who knew you, and watching them wonder if maybe they didn't. Tyler was still with me. We turned the dining room into a war room, notes pinned to the walls, court transcripts highlighted in neon pink and yellow. He brought energy, hope. He cracked jokes when I couldn't breathe. "If we ever get out of this," he said, "I'm making you buy me a dog. A big one. One of those dogs that looks like it pays taxes. I laughed harder than I had in months. And that night, as I flipped through the pages of my notebook, a line I had scribbled weeks earlier stared back at me like a prophecy. She underestimated me. She didn't think I'd fight. She doesn't know who I am when I've got nothing left to lose. And then, it happened. A week later, Dave called. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge of adrenaline behind it. "We need to talk," he said. "Now." "What is it?" I asked, hard in my throat. "Steve, Amy's dad. He just showed up at my office." I sat up straight. "Why?" He said, "There are things in Amy's timeline that aren't adding up. He's starting to have doubts." I froze. "Steve, the man who told me to get off his property, the man who filed the police report, the man who once said I was like a son." "Get dressed," Dave said. "We might finally have something that breaks this wide open." Steve stood in Dave's office like a man with two lives in his hands, one he built and one he couldn't stop from falling apart. I watched him through the glass wall as Dave motioned me in. He hadn't shaved. His flannel shirt looked slept in. He didn't look like the man who used to cheer during backyard cornhole games or give me pointers on torque and spark plugs. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. He didn't stand up, didn't shake my hand. He just said, "I need to ask you something." I nodded. "Okay." "Man to man," he said, his voice gravel. "Did you touch my daughter?" I held his gaze. I didn't blink. "No, sir." "I didn't touch Amy. I didn't send her those messages. I didn't do anything she's accusing me of." He searched my face for something. A flicker. A flinch. I gave him the only thing I had. Left the truth. Finally, he looked down. "There are things in her story that don't make sense," he murmured. "Things that couldn't have happened when she said they did." That sentence cracked open a door I'd been pounding on for 6 months. And then he said something that made my chest tighten. "I have a camera." The next part felt like something out of a movie. Steve explained that months ago, after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, he'd installed a Nest camera above the garage door. It faced the driveway, but depending on the angle, it could catch part of the kitchen window. He hadn't checked the footage since that night. Didn't even remember it existed until last week when Amy said something that didn't line up. "She told me you stayed past 10 p.m. I'm up, Mom," Steve said. "But I remember seeing you leave before I even finished my shower." That got me wondering. He opened the Nest app, showed us the login. Dave and Kevin, our forensic guy, immediately requested the cloud backup. Within minutes, they were scanning footage frame by frame. There I was, 9:37 p.m., walking out the front door, calm, alone. Then Amy following me out, barefoot, arms crossed. She didn't look scared. No bruises, no panic. Just annoyed. She didn't even shut the door behind her. The timestamp was irrefutable. And the timeline Amy gave in her official statement. She claimed the assault happened around 9:45. In the kitchen, then continued into the living room. She described crying, bruising, yelling. But the video, it proved I'd already left. That none of it could have happened the way she said. Dave sat back in his chair, stunned. This could win us the case. I wanted to cry, or laugh, or collapse. Instead, I just stared at the screen. A silent piece of plastic had captured the only truth that mattered. The camera had seen what no one else believed. Steve's voice cracked as he added, "I should have looked sooner." "I don't blame you," I said, even though I wanted to. even though part of me always would. Because in a world where everyone took Amy at her word, Steve had been the one person who could have questioned her earlier, could have spared me months of being hated, hunted, and hollowed out. But I didn't say that. Because now, he was here, and he brought the one thing none of us expected: evidence. That night, I sat on the back porch with Tyler, my notebook open on my lap, pen in hand, but I didn't write anything. I just watched the wind move the trees. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I think this might be the beginning of the end." "Or the end of the beginning," he said. We sat in silence a long time. Then I whispered, almost to myself, "If that camera hadn't been there, I'd be going to prison for something I didn't do." Tyler didn't answer, because we both knew how close it had been. One angle, one decision, one device Steve almost forgot. The next morning, Dave filed an emergency motion to introduce the video as new evidence. The prosecution objected hard, claimed it was a last-minute stunt, but the judge reviewed the timestamp and ruled it admissible. I wasn't naive. I knew one video couldn't erase everything. But it cracked open doubt, and in court, doubt is everything. Meanwhile, Amy's legal team was scrambling. Then came the twist none of us saw coming. Her story changed. Again. We got the update through Discovery a few days later. Suddenly, she claimed I had threatened her multiple times after that night. That's why she'd waited to report it. That's why her timeline was fuzzy. She said trauma had clouded her memory. Dave nearly choked on his coffee. She's unraveling. Twist after twist, lie after lie, it was all starting to pile up. The more she added, the less her version made sense. And while all this was happening, Megan texted me something simple but devastating. "Cassie still believes her, even now." That night, I opened the notebook again. But this time, I didn't write facts. I wrote rage. Big, messy letters across the page. "You believed her without even asking me?" That hurt more than anything Amy ever said. Because Cassie didn't just doubt me, she erased me. Our memories, our years, our love. For what a sister who hated living in her shadow. I slammed the notebook shut. Then I looked up and whispered, "I'm not just going to survive this. I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who she is." Steve agreed to testify. He told Dave he'd stand in court, under oath, and confirm what the video showed. He would say it loud, I believe Marcus. After all the months of silence, of betrayal, of shame, this was the moment I started to believe I might actually walk free. But I didn't know yet that Amy had one final card to play. The courthouse smelled like old wood and recycled air. I sat at the defendant's table. My hands folded so tightly they turned pale. Dave whispered last-minute reminders beside me, flipping through documents, highlighting notes I'd already memorized. It was July 17th. 9 months since that night in the kitchen. 9 months of headlines, hate mail, isolation, and lawyers. Now it all came down to this. 12 strangers in a box. One judge, and a courtroom full of people who weren't sure if I was a monster or a victim. The prosecution went first. They opened with a story so slick, so rehearsed, it didn't even sound like Amy anymore. To hear them tell it, I was a predator who used my relationship with Cassie to get close to her little sister, who groomed her for months, who assaulted her when no one was home, who left bruises as trophies. They showed photos, her wrists, faint purple marks, a medical report confirming consistent with reported incident. They pulled up the texts again, the fake ones, and for a moment, even I questioned myself. They looked so real, But I kept thinking about the nest footage. It was our sword in a room full of shadows. Then they called Amy to the stand. She walked in like a ghost in Sunday clothes, hair, and a ponytail. No makeup. Cardigan buttoned to her throat. She looked 15 again. Deliberate. Fragile. I couldn't breathe. She sat, swore in, and began crying almost instantly. She told them I made her feel special, that I took advantage of her vulnerability, that I pinned her wrists against the counter and ignored her when she said no. She even said I threatened her the next day if she told anyone. It was textbook. Every pause, every tear, perfectly placed. Then came cross-examination. Dave stood up slowly, calm, controlled, and for the first time in months, I saw her shake. In your initial statement, you said the incident took place entirely in the kitchen. Correct. Amy sniffled, yes. But in your revised statement from May, you said it continued into the living room. I remembered more during therapy. She said, trauma can block things. And in October, you told police the assault occurred around 9:45 p.m. After your dad went upstairs. But in the Nest camera footage from the garage, Mr. Ellis is seen leaving at 9:37. She froze. The timestamp is verified. You follow him out the door. You're visibly upset but not injured. You have no bruises. You're not crying. Her lip quivered. That footage doesn't show everything. No. But it shows something. Dave said, it shows that your timeline doesn't match. That your original story was false, and now it's changed twice. She went silent. That silence echoed louder than anything she'd said. Day 2 brought in Olivia. She told the jury about her brother, the false accusation, the job he lost, the damage it did. Then Jason, her brother, flew in from Arizona to testify. She gets obsessed. He said clearly, you say no. She turns it into revenge. That's what happened to me. And I believe it's what happened to Marcus. Then came Grace, my sister. She described Amy's strange fascination, how she asked to see old yearbook photos, how she'd bring me up in weird conversations. It gave me the creeps, she said. Dave was building a story, a different story, one of obsession, jealousy, manipulation, one where I wasn't the villain, but the target. Then came Steve. He sat in the witness chair like he carried 100 pounds on his back. He wouldn't look at Amy, wouldn't look at me either. But his voice was clear. I believed my daughter. He said, I didn't want to question her. He swallowed hard. But after reviewing the Nest camera footage, I saw Marcus leaving the house before the time she claimed anything happened. I should have looked sooner. The prosecutor tried to rattle him. Asked if the video could have been altered. No, Steve said. It was uploaded directly to the cloud. I downloaded it myself. Then he looked straight at the jury and said, I don't believe Marcus did what Amy accused him of. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Dave stood and made his move. Your Honor, we request to introduce the Nest footage into evidence and play it for the court. The prosecutor objected, called it a last-minute ambush, but the judge allowed it. The screen flickered on. There I was, walking out the kitchen door. Amy followed me. No bruises, no fear, just frustration. She glanced back inside, crossed her arms, and slammed the door. The timestamp read 9:37 p.m. It was over in 30 seconds. But those 30 seconds were more powerful than every speech, every testimony, every document. It proved I was gone before the crime supposedly happened. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, heads turning toward Amy, who looked suddenly very small. The judge slammed the gavel. Order. I turned toward the gallery and saw Cassie. She was sitting next to Diane, pale, eyes wide, lips parted like she wanted to speak. She had just seen the truth. But was it too late? After court adjourned for the day, Dave grabbed my arm. "They're rattled," he whispered. Prosecution asked for a recess to review their case. That means they're scared. I nodded, numb. Then I saw Amy outside the courthouse. She stood with her attorney, visibly shaken. Her hands were shaking. She looked up, and for a moment, our eyes met. And in that instant, I didn't see guilt. I saw fear. Not fear of what she'd done, but fear of being exposed. She turned away quickly. Back at the house, Tyler and I sat in silence. The lights were off. My notebook was open again. But I couldn't write. I just whispered. What if this still isn't enough? Tyler leaned back, arms crossed. Then we fight harder. Then Dave texted. They offered a new deal. 18 months. Parole in 9. Think about it. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. And that's when I realized they were losing in the fluorescent glare of the courtroom. Amy looked smaller than ever. Her cardigan hung limp on her shoulders. The same tears she'd mastered before now looked forced like a final act in a show no one wanted to watch. Dave stood, cleared his throat, and asked the court reporter to play the Nest footage one more time, this time side by side with Amy's testimony timeline. On the video, the timestamp flickered 9:37 p.m. Amy's original statement said 9:45 p.m. Her revised statement said 10:0 p.m. Judge Patterson frowned, calling silence with a sharp knock of her gavel. Ms. Taylor, Dave began. Voice calm but firm. You initially told police the incident happened in the kitchen at approximately 9:45 p.m. after your father showered. Then you said it continued into the living room. Yet Mr. Ellis is clearly shown leaving before 9:40. How do you explain that discrepancy? Amy's bottom lip quivered. She swallowed hard, searching Dave's face for mercy. I was traumatized. Time felt different. Crying can distort perceptions, the prosecutor interjected. But it doesn't explain the 3 different timelines you've given. Dave shook his head. It does, Your Honor, because it shows her story is fluid. It changes to fit the narrative she wants us to believe. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I sank back in my chair, heart hammering, feeling the decades-old wood bench under my knees. Then came the moment that shattered what was left of Amy's credibility. Dave held up a small printout, one of the therapist's notes Amy's team had filed under privileged. It contained a session entry dated May 12th, stating she was working through memory blocks from traumatic event of October 9th. The prosecutor gasped. The judge blinked. Your Honor, Dave said. This document confirms she had not fully recounted all details until May, months after she first alleged assault. She's admitted her story grew over time. Amy's face went pale, blotchy. She blinked rapidly, the practiced tears giving way to real fear. Judge Patterson leaned forward. Miss Taylor, are you telling this court that you deliberately omitted details in your initial report and later added them? Amy's voice broke. I thought I was remembering more as I processed it. I didn't mean to mislead. You understand that giving a false statement under oath is perjury, the judge said. Do you swear your current testimony is accurate to the best of your recollection? Amy paused, then nodded. Voice so small it barely carried, "Yes, ma'am." That afternoon, the defense called their last witness, Kevin, the digital forensics expert. He walked the jury through code-level details, how message metadata is like a digital fingerprint, how Amy's supposed texts bore anomalies impossible to spoof without leaving traces. He explained in plain language, think of it as sending a letter. If someone alters the envelope after it's sealed, you'd see the creases. These messages were altered after the fact. The jury leaned in. Every eye was on them. After Kevin sat down, the prosecutor suddenly requested a brief sidebar with the judge. When they emerged, the prosecutor's face was drawn, pale as chalk. Your Honor, the people hereby move to dismiss all charges against Marcus Ellis with prejudice, he said. In light of the evidence calling the complainant's entire testimony into question, continuing this case would be an abuse of the court's resources. Gasps echoed through the benches. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't draw a breath. Judge Patterson tapped her pen. Charges are dismissed. Court is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, cameras clicked like clockwork. Reporters' voices bounced off the marble walls. I walked out with Dave and Tyler, shielded by my sister Grace and Megan. Crowds pressed in, some shouting congratulations, others silent, avoiding eye contact. Cassie stood on the courthouse steps. Her eyes were red, cheeks streaked. She held Diane's hand, and Diane held hers like they were clinging to what was left of our history. I took a step toward them, heart pounding. Cassie looked up. Her gaze held relief and guilt. She opened her mouth, then closed it, turned and walked away with her mother, leaving Diane standing alone for a moment, watching me. I wanted to run after Cassie, to apologize, to explain, to beg her not to let me go completely. But a hand on my shoulder stopped me. It was Steve. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry, he said, voice thick. For everything. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Steve stared at me, blinking, like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he vanished into the crowd. That night, I sat on the front porch of my parents' house, notebook in hand. But this time, I didn't write. I stared at the spiral binding, remembering how it saved me, kept me sane. I snapped it shut and closed my eyes. The cicadas hummed. The street lamp cast long shadows. In that silence, I realized the fight wasn't over. Yes, I'd been exonerated. Yes, Amy's lies had collapsed under their own weight. But the stains remained on my record. My relationships, my sense of self. My phone buzzed. A text from Dave. University expulsion still stands. They require a settlement. And Cassie's attorney is demanding a restraining order hearing next week. My heart sank. A restraining order from the woman who refused to believe me. I tapped out a response. We'll fight it. I'm not done. As I pocketed the phone, I looked out at the quiet street, wondering what came next. Because clearing my name in court was just the beginning. I walked back into the courtroom for the final time with my heart in my throat. The fluorescent lights felt harsher than ever, casting every shadow of doubt across my face. This wasn't a criminal hearing anymore. It was Cassie's restraining order request, one last blow from the woman who still couldn't believe I was innocent. I sat at the defense table with Dave by my side. Across the aisle, Cassie sat with her attorney. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders slumped in her hand. the same cardigan she'd worn on that first day of testimony. I held my notebook in my lap. Its spiral binding was worn soft, pages dog-eared, coffee-stained, my anchor, my truth. Judge Patterson glanced down at the files. This hearing addresses Ms. Taylor's request for a protective order against Mr. Ellis. Counsel, your opening remarks. Cassie's attorney rose. He spoke in clipped tones, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor endured months of predatory behavior. Despite criminal charges being dismissed, the emotional trauma persists. She feels unsafe around Mr. Ellis. We request a 3-year protective order. I felt a wave of nausea. Predatory behavior, emotional trauma, words that once described nightmares, now twisted to target me. Dave stood, calm as ever. Your Honor, the evidence shows Mr. Ellis was exonerated. No credible threat remains. In fact, Miss Taylor's own statements changed so drastically they undermined her fear claim. A protective order would punish an innocent man contrary to the principles of due process. Cassie watched us both, her face unreadable. I wanted to reach out, say I'm sorry. But Dave motioned me to remain seated. The judge studied the files, police reports, testimony transcripts, Nest footage still lodged in her mind. No doubt. Finally, she spoke. Under Ohio statute, a protective order requires evidence of immediate danger or credible threat. While I recognize Miss Taylor's distress, the record demonstrates Mr. Ellis poses no ongoing threat. She paused, then added, protective order denied. Relief exploded in my chest, so intense I almost gasped aloud. I leaned back, closing my eyes for one breath, walking out. The courtyard was quiet. A late summer breeze rustled the leaves. I spotted Grace waiting by my car, arms crossed but eyes soft. Behind her, Megan gave a small thumbs up. Cassie stood alone a few yards away, watching. Our eyes met for a heartbeat. She looked torn, guilt mingled with relief. Then something else I couldn't read. I stepped forward. Cassie. She held up a hand. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice cracking. I've heard that before. I said, voice low. Then softer, I forgive you. Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded and walked away with Diane. But the day wasn't over. Next stop, the university president's office. I'd sued Indiana State for wrongful expulsion under Title IX procedures. They'd agreed to mediation, no public admission of fault, but a settlement to cover my legal fees, some tuition reimbursement, and an official apology letter. I sat across from Dr. Reynolds, the president. He was an older man with kind eyes, wearing an academic gown draped over his chair. Mr. Ellis, he began, while we cannot change the past, we regret the harm done by our expedited suspension process. We agree to a settlement of $200,000 plus reopening your academic status. I glanced at Dave. He gave a subtle nod. I turned back to Reynolds. Thank you. I appreciate your acknowledgement. But my goal isn't the money. It's ensuring the system respects due process, so no one else goes through what I did. He sighed. We'll revise our protocols. We'll include external review before summary suspensions. That was all I needed to hear. Later that evening, I dropped by the shelter to see Riley. His tail thumped the floor when he saw me. I knelt, wrapping my arms around him. His fur was soft, and he nuzzled into my chest. I carried my notebook out to the porch, Riley at my side. I flipped to a blank page, the first I'd seen in months. I wrote, Chapter 7, Free but with Scars. I paused, watching the sunset paint the sky amber. The notebook captured my journey: fear, rage, doubt, vindication. It was more than paper. It was proof that truth can outlast lies. 2 weeks later, I had my first day back on campus. Walking through the ivy-covered archway felt surreal. Students bustled past, unaware of my story. I tapped my chest gently, feeling my heartbeat steady. I sat up in my old computer lab. Riley curled at my feet under the desk, my code compiled without errors. The hum of fans filled the quiet evening. It was good to be building something again, lines of code, not lies. That night, I closed my notebook and placed it on the shelf above my desk. It sat beside my law books and the small framed photo of the three of us, me, Cassie, and Steve, at Lake Monroe 5 summers ago. A memory before everything fell apart. I stroked the notebook's cover. The spiral coil had survived bent but unbroken, a quiet testament to resilience. But some echoes still linger. I scroll public records to see Amy's probation expiry. I check her social media photos of marketing conferences, happy-go-lucky posts. No remorse, no acknowledgement. I wonder if she even feels guilt, or if in her mind, she was the victim all along. I shut the laptop and stretch. Tomorrow, I'll meet with a volunteer group advocating for fair Title IX processes. We'll share my story, push for change, because my fight never really ended in court. It continues wherever justice needs a voice. The night air cools as I step outside with Riley. He sniffs the grass, tail wagging. Together, we look up at the sky stars emerging one by one. The world is wide, full of shadows and light. And in that space, truth still matters. My life is rebuilt but not repaired. There are cracks, faint but visible, reminders of what was taken and what I had to fight for. I place a hand over my heart. Here's to new beginnings, I whisper. Riley barks softly in agreement. And as I close the door, I know this story, my story, still carries on.